Welcome to Back Issues, where I examine horror movie coverage from vintage horror magazines. We're deep into the summer season, and I'm in the mood to talk about Jaws. There's a lot I can say about the classic and nearly flawless original film, but instead, let's talk about Jaws 4. This film was covered in issue number 66 of Fangoria magazine, published in August 1987. Jaws: The Revenge is the film that killed the franchise. Everyone seems to hate this movie with a passion, and is considered one of the worst films of all time. The plot follows the recently widowed Ellen Brody from the first film. One of her sons is killed by a great white shark, and she becomes convinced that the shark is out for revenge against her family. She develops a weird psychic connection to the shark and can sense it before and during attacks. Hey, is this where they got the psychic connection idea for Halloween 5: The Revenge of Michael Myers? So Ellen's surviving son and his family convince her to go away with them to the Bahamas, and guess who follows them there? Her son and his buddy study the shark in secret, and they all eventually square off against the beast, which spends the movie leaping out of the water and roaring like a dinosaur. The bizarre ending has the shark being impaled with a ship and exploding. Yeah, I do have to note that the superior ending, with the shark being bloodily impaled and not exploding, was changed from the original theatrical version. I really wish this version, which is often shown on TV, would get a proper Blu-ray release. I can't be the only person clamoring for an alternate cut of Jaws 4 on Blu-ray or 4K, right? Well, on second thought, I vividly remember reading about Jaws: The Revenge in this issue of Fangoria when I was 6 years old. It's the only Jaws film I actually remember seeing trailers for and knowing about ahead of its release. The cover promises that Bruce, the name given to the shark by Steven Spielberg during the first film, bites back. The main cover photo features the Lost Boys. They're hot, they're sexy, they're undead. RoboCop, Hellraiser, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, and Monster Squad, among others, add to the fun. What an amazing issue. The fold-out poster is a nice image from Evil Dead 2. Inside is loaded with great stuff, including an ad for the Freddy Fan Club. As it proclaims, the Freddy Fan Club isn't for wimps, so if you're a wimp, don't bother. But if you get a rush out of spilled blood or revel in the joy of a clean beheading, you're Freddy's kind of people. I wish to God I had bugged my parents into paying for my membership back then. I know they would have if I'd bugged them enough. So the Jaws coverage runs 4 pages. Apparently, Universal Pictures refused to release any images of the shark before the release, so Fangoria had to rely on shots of Bruce the Shark from the first film. This photo of the Brody brother with his arm bitten off has been ingrained in my mind since I was a little kid. I'm not sure why. It's not particularly graphic, but whenever I think of Jaws: The Revenge, I see this exact image in my mind. Fangoria reporter Edward Gross visited the set in the Bahamas during the final day of location shooting there. A storm and rough waters ended up canceling the filming for the day, which seemed to be one of many omens concerning the troubled film. Director Joseph Sargent is interviewed in this issue. He actually directed one of my favorite original Star Trek episodes, The Corbomite Maneuver. He talks about the troubled production and states that it would be a miracle if the film made its July 17, 1987 release date. A miracle must have occurred because it did, in fact, make the release date. Sargent says, quote, "We were doing fine until we ran into unseasonal weather, which completely derailed our shark. It simply cannot function in these 6 or 7 foot swells," end quote. Sargent details how he became involved with the film and how he initially refused until the head honcho of Universal insisted that they wanted a people picture, not a shark picture. Writer Michael de Guzman is also interviewed and goes over the rush process of making the film. He reveals that they only had an outline to go off of during pre-production, and that the script was being written and rewritten all throughout filming. He and the director criticized Jaws 2 and 3 and state that as far as they were concerned, it's just the first Jaws and this film that exist. The similarities between the making of this film and another Part 4, Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation, are striking. Both films had a reluctant director and makers that bashed the previous sequels, and both would go on to be massive critical and financial failures. The writer goes on about how this film is about obsession and fear and all kinds of deep psychological stuff. He makes it sound like he's writing Shakespeare or something. The director agrees, and this coverage offers a fascinating view of the film they wanted to make, but failed miserably at accomplishing. The Fangoria coverage is pretty down on the movie, as if the writer knew it was going to be a dud. The end of the coverage is especially telling. It says, quote, "Perhaps the makers of Jaws the Revenge can pull off an entertaining and thrilling saltwater thriller, thus returning to the unforgettable precedent laid down by Spielberg. But even this renewed sense of optimism goes hand in hand with a certain degree of pessimism. Does the potential success of Jaws the Revenge mean that audiences will someday be subjected to a Jaws 5? End quote. It's clear from the coverage that Fangoria wasn't too hopeful or interested in this Jaws sequel or any potential future sequels. Although obviously not on the same level as the first Jaws or even Jaws 2, I always enjoyed this one. Like Jaws 3, it's goofy fun. The psychic connection and the fact that the shark is hunting the Brody family is pretty lame and weird, but I had fun with it. Maybe it's nostalgia on my part, or just the fact that I tend to like bad movies. But I never thought Jaws the Revenge was as god-awful as everyone makes it out to be. But there is no denying that this film killed the Jaws franchise. Released on July 17, 1987, the $23 million sequel made just $20.7 million in the US. 32 years later, there have been no more Jaws films. Interestingly enough, and totally by accident, I uploaded this video pretty close to the original release date of the film. So, happy anniversary to Jaws the Revenge.